it's very easy to fall into the trap if you've been divorced to say, well, now I'm not worthy to lead, right? Not worthy to be a tribe leader. Or I'm not worthy to lead at church or in my own family. And that's one of the biggest lies that is out there. None of us are worthy to do any of that. We are through Christ. He makes us worthy.
Men's Alliance is tribes across the nation that meet weekly for rugged outdoor workouts and real-world devotions around a fire. We are changing what Christian men's ministry in this country looks like. And when you're ready to challenge yourself physically and spiritually, join us at men'salliancetribe.com. Welcome to part 2 of the most stressful thing you can go through, divorce. It's an important topic because it affects so many men. And, if you do a Google search for most stressful life experiences, this is something that's been studied, and there are lists and they rank them from hospitals to universities have studied most stressful life events. And any list you look at, any website you go to, divorce will either be 1, 2, or 3. It's usually 2 on most charts. Death of a spouse is the most stressful. Second is divorce. And then anything else you can ever go through in life is going to be a little bit less stressful than that. And so that, to me, when I learned that a couple years ago, I was really surprised. And now the more I've talked to guys about it, the less surprised I am, right? So all that to say, it's so important because it's so stressful, and it has tremendous opportunity to throw a guy off course, to just really rock your world. So we did this about a month or so ago, and we had was it Triple and Router?
Yes, sir.
With you, and you brought a couple guys back.
Yes, sir.
So we'll start over here and just introduce yourselves.
All right. Mike Spuds Kiefer. This is my first MA podcast.
Oh man,
Do we call
what? Do we what?
Can't believe that. We got to get you on more often.
So Travis Robertson, call sign Bunker, and also first podcast on the Men's Alliance.
Yeah, welcome.
All right. And you know me, box office, Mike Morrison, second time, many time listener though.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome guys. Thanks for coming here. Thanks for
Shadow.
Oh yeah, and Shadow's over here.
Shadow. First time.
And just being willing to share your story. I don't have some set list of questions. I just want us to have a conversation about whatever's on your minds, as much or as little as you want to share. And why don't we just start off with Spuds here? Just tell us a little bit about your story. Your story as it relates to all things marriage and divorce.
Yeah. Well, I've had a bit of experience in that department. I have had 2 divorces. A lot of people don't know that, but first marriage, I married my high school sweetheart, and we got married in 1989. Dated in high school, didn't have any children from that marriage, but I was in my freshman year at VCU and living at home. And one day she said, "Hey, I really want to get married." And I was thinking more after college, and she said, she wanted to get married so much that she didn't want to keep the relationship going if we didn't get married. So I think that was in the winter that year, and we ended up getting married that August. So I was bound and determined to continue on with school. So we got married in a Pentecostal church, and we got an apartment, and I started trying to do all the right things, be a provider and still do school. So I was working 2 jobs and working 60 hours a week, basically. And I was doing the minimum for full-time at VCU, 12 credit hours. But marriage lasted, and we ended up buying a house the next year. Actually, at 20 years old, I bought a house, which is kind of crazy looking back. But even back then, I wanted to do all the right things, check all the boxes, right? A couple years later, she wanted out of the marriage. That really crushed me. I'd put so much into trying to make it work. I was probably junior or so, maybe a senior at VCU at that point on the 5-year plan. So, of course, I tried to talk her out of it, do everything in my own strength to piece that back together. So that ended. Pretty short order after that, I met my second wife, and our relationship took off really quickly. Got very emotionally tied to her. Moved in together within probably 6 months, something like that. After my divorce was already, it was finalized by then. But at any rate, so lived together a couple years, and she got pregnant. I'd also finally gotten full-time corporate job, UPS at the time. So I was basically, for 6 months, I lived out in Roanoke, Danville, doing work, and came back, and she was pregnant, so we got married by a lawyer that we knew, family, so it was just a legal marriage, and ended up moving to Roanoke, and our first child was born. So we had probably 10 good years of marriage, I'd say. And I was the kind of guy that I wanted to check all the boxes, from the outside looking in, good provider. She was a stay-at-home mom and a great mother, and just tried to do all the right things, right? But we had some foundational issues. Both of those marriages had foundational issues. Mainly I wasn't ready fully, because God wasn't at the center of what I was doing. It was all about my own desires, and also my own sense of pride too. A lot of that revolved back around pride, trying to do everything right and get accolades from people saying, hey, he's such a great guy, he's doing everything right. Well, I wasn't doing everything right, and so we started to have some issues, and we were married 15 years before things really fell apart in 2009. And by 2011, we were divorced. And I'll just say that, I had overwhelming sense of grief about the situation, and some anger and unworthiness, definitely, and it was just very difficult to deal with, because I had, again, tried to do all the right things. Meanwhile, at that time too, my job was going sideways, which I think happens a lot with divorce. You get very distracted on things, so things weren't well there. I was barely hanging on to my career. Marriage had gone south. So, but the biggest thing about all that is all those years I was isolated. I did everything on my own strength, trying to do all the right things, but all on my own strength. And I remember when things went bad in 2009, I had one friend to call, and he was 3 hours away in Roanoke. So he was a Christian, and he was my shoulder to cry on. And I was not in a good spot. I was in a very bad spot mentally, and just extremely difficult time in my life. So after the divorce, I took about a year plus off. I wanted to have nothing to do with women, just because I needed to heal. Not bashing women here. I love women, but I needed time to heal. I was not in any kind of frame of mind, and then I started to date after that, and shouldn't have been dating anybody because I wasn't where I needed to be. Um, so I don't want to totally take all the time here, Bunker, but I'll just say, I eventually met my wife, Stephanie, wonderful woman, such a blessing for me, and we have an amazing marriage. But to the guys out there, I want to tell you that there is hope out there. You got to get out of the isolation. You got to put God first. And he provided what I needed in so many ways. And certainly the wife I have now is one of them. But you've got to get the forgiveness done too. That's something you can't hang on to. I took an Uber drive with a Uber driver this about a week ago. And we got on this topic, and he told me that he got divorced 35 years ago. His ex-wife is dead. He's still angry about things that happened. And I told him the same thing. I was like, man, you got to forgive. You got to move on. I mean, and you got to let go of that baggage. So, and it would have been a lot easier to do all that if I had all my MA brothers back then. So, all right.
How long was it between the second divorce and your current marriage? How long were you single there?
Well, so the divorce happened in 2011 when it was finalized, and Stephanie and I started dating in 2013. She had children, I had children, separate homes. We finally got married and merged everybody in 2017. So I didn't rush things that time.
Yeah.
So
I think that's an important part of the story. And we can come back to that.
Yeah.
The 6 year between, 6 years of being single, although you were in a relationship and dating,
Right.
you were still single.
Right.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that, man. All right, Bunker.
Well, it's somewhat similar in some ways about rushing the story, or rushing into marriage. But thank you for sharing that, Spud. It's very endearing, to be that honest. And so I'm going to embrace some of that too, is start with I would say right at college would be a good place to start with my first serious relationship. And I was dating this girl that we met in high school. We were high school sweethearts, very similar, but we were really prolonging the commitment stage. And then finally we jumped in and said, all right, we're going to do this. Got engaged. And this is where it starts off a little rough, because this was the first period where I didn't realize what a commitment really is. Because I did love this girl, but I also was totally, I would say, inadequate in some ways in terms of not prioritizing her. And what I mean by that is that was my first introduction to getting addicted to pornography. And so did not realize what that would do to a person, how detrimental that can be. So when that came to light, a lot of things stemmed from that. There was a lot of, I would say, tension back and forth. And then we ended up dissolving everything. We were engaged, got that was done. But, there's not a lot of there's really no legal ties to that. So when I've talked with people, I've been told, and I do agree, it didn't hurt enough, because it was somebody I loved, but we didn't have a lot of entanglement together. So then how did I handle that? I handled that how most immature 20-year-olds would do. I started partying a lot in college. It's a period that I'm not very proud of, but it happens, part of it. And then I met my ex-wife she was my girlfriend at the time, met in college, and we started dating. And this was only 3 months after that period. I didn't take any time to reflect on that and process what had happened. So we started dating, God was not at the center of any of this at any point. And then as we started dating, we went through college, and then we started getting more committed, and then we got engaged. And so that was in 2020, because the first sign of us probably not needing to get married was right when COVID happened and the wedding got canceled. And instead of waiting through that and seeing what God was trying to tell us and asking and praying about that, we decided to elope and go against what God was trying to communicate to us. And so we got married. And actually, what was surprising was, for my story, during the marriage in COVID was actually the more peaceful period. We actually did well when we had a lot of time together. And I think it was the one thing the first time reflecting, I realized that, like, understanding people's different love languages. She was very quality time. I was more very much acts of service. I love doing things for people because I'm acts of service and affirmation based. But she really, really enjoyed quality time. And it's tough to talk about this because throughout this whole journey, I was still very much entangled in pornography, but it really hadn't come to the surface yet. And so, this is tough. Sorry. So when this process is going through, once COVID starts to finally subside, this is actually when our marriage starts to dissolve. It starts to really hit a lot of road bumps because she was very much career oriented and I'm very much career oriented. And because it's just how we grew up. And so when we were together all the time, we did better. As we started drifting apart from work and other distractions, that's when, now looking back, I can start to see that, man, there were so many red flags and so many things I should have been able to see. Well, finally, this is actually a period I look back and I'm very grateful for, when my pornography addiction came out. She found out about it, and we didn't talk about it. I didn't pray about it. Didn't ask any advice. I was to what you said, Spuds, was very, very isolated. I didn't have any friends except my wife at the time, and we chose to shut down and not talk about it. And weeks went by, and you're not, when you don't communicate, things just explode. They blow up and blow up. So I would like to say that it got better. No, I doubled down and trying to distract myself from that. I started investing a lot of money and what I consider as like a gambling addiction. Lost thousands of dollars, and then it just spiraled from there. When I'll fast forward to December of 2022, right before Christmas, and tends to be, that's when the most stress is right around holiday stuff, is when I was told, hey, I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. And the bank accounts are switched and everything. Just like on December 19th was my D-Day of 2022. So she ended up going to her parents' house. I chose to continue to isolate. And so after that point, then I'm like, all right, I need to ask God, what do you want me to do? And I remember, I will never forget being in the bathroom, just sitting in the shower for hours and just like praying and saying, God, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm tired of the pain. But the pain didn't stop there, because about a few weeks later is when I had protective order served, and I did not handle that well. That was probably the last period I would like to reflect on and say that was when I gave up spite, gave up pride, gave up all that. It was tough. I look back and am not proud of that, but it's also what's driven me to be the man I am now. And so after having to leave the house, I was with my best friend. Lee is an amazing individual, and I will forever be indebted to him. His wife was 7 months pregnant at the time, and he said, just come stay with us to figure it out. And then 2 weeks later is when this guy showed up. I don't even remember his name, but he showed up at 9:00 at night at his house. And that was when I got the divorce papers served, and my heart sank. I didn't know what to do. And at that time, I was actively pursuing God. And so I just went into prayer and I said, all right, God, this is a moment where no matter what happens to my marriage, I'm going to do everything. And I'm so grateful. Where is it at? There's somewhere it says finish strong. I saw it. And,
Where?
and I actually, yeah, there it is. Thank you. I saw it's somewhere. I knew it. And that was the moment. I wasn't even in MA at this time, but I said, God, I'm going to finish this the right way, no matter what happens. And so from there, it was definitely more uplifting. It's gotten better. That was a year and a half ago. Started going to addiction therapy, started seeking counsel, getting past the pornography stuff and all of the things that I was wrapped up in. But it was still a very, very rocky road. It was bumpy until about March of 2023, and that was when I met some here may know Chris Norwood. Give him a shout out because I was at the church that he's at now, where Ironclad Tribe is, and I remember talking with him, just sitting in the truck, saying, I knew he had went through some stuff, some similar things, and I was just like, give me advice, just seeking advice, help me. What do I do? And we went to the Ignite Tribe, and that was where I think it was Quack that I think he was the one that had the analogy of bricks and pebbles in your shoe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was when I just knew, I was like, I've got to find this organization, find these people, these godly men that could help me. And that from there, it's been a godsend, because I remember giving a devotion on this, and I don't think I got any words out. I just cried the whole time. But I needed that. I needed that to heal. Needed that to see how to handle tough situations like this. And so you opened up with talking about when you have situations like this, it gives me a perspective where when things go wrong in life now, I always think, hey, you had your divorce papers served in front of your best friend. It doesn't, like, that is clearly my lowest point. And I think that whatever I'm going through, it'll be okay. So I think kind of coming to an end here, to not take the time all the time. But what I would say to anybody that struggles with this is don't rush the process and don't isolate. Because those are the main things that I've learned from this. And obviously put God first. I wish I would have done that before, but I think I was so stubborn at the time, I would have never learned until I hit some rocky situations. So there is some more to the story, but I'll pause there.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
How would you guys say you're different than you used to be? Like, in what ways? If you had to compare yourself to, the you early on in your previous marriage, how are you not like that guy now?
Do you want to take this one, Spuds?
You're each going to take it.
Oh, do you want to take it first?
Sure. My relationship with God is much, much stronger. That has a lot to do with MA and who I've circled myself around, godly men who have encouraged me to grow my faith, learn, become more educated about my faith. That's the biggest thing. Things of this world are not nearly as important to me now. So I have a lot more peace in my life now.
Yeah.
Than then. And it revolves around trying to do it all on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get around my pride. I hated working with teams, and that's why I was in sales, because I like to be on my own. So yeah, a lot more peace in my life, a lot closer to God, surrounded by the right people.
That's good.
It's really good.
That's big. Those some big changes, big differences.
Yeah.
So for me, it'd be very similar. I don't view myself as selfish anymore. I used to only think about myself, and now it's like, how can I help others? And mainly with men or anybody that's struggling, with stuff like this. And so now to what you said, Spuds, I feel more like a team player because I just want to see people succeed, and I don't want to see people hurt, you know. And so I think one word for me comes to mind through all this, and I've never had more empathy from this journey than I would have ever imagined. Because now I can just, a couple times I've been able to see when somebody's struggling and see when somebody's hurting. And it's like, how can I help that individual? So I think empathy is probably the biggest thing I've gained from my story.
What was something that helped you get through or help break the cycle of the porn?
I would say the biggest was just getting it out in the light, because that I'm actually it's what's helped me. I don't think I'm totally forgiven yet, and that's why I'm not in the dating world now, because I'm still healing. But it's what has helped me was getting it out in the light, and I actually thank my ex-wife. I've prayed over that, and I actually am very grateful that she took a stand, because maybe it didn't work out the way I wanted, sure, but God knew what I needed. And so don't ever sit in darkness with it, because that you won't. I'll just tell you now, if you try to do it yourself, you will yourself into it. You'll fail 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So getting it out in the light was the best thing that ever happened. It's a very painful process. So
That's huge. That's good.
If I could answer your question too, biggest difference between old me and new me is I'm awake now. During my marriage, towards the end of it, if y'all recall from the podcast, I was really lazy and really, my faith was dead. I mean, I was kind of going through the motions a lot in life. I was, she always said I was a really good father, but I mean, when it came to her and really just life in general, I was just kind of going through the motions. And so her coming to me, and it was starting that process of separation and divorce, it woke me up. And so like every time I think of where I was and where I am now, awaken is the word that always pops in my head all the time. So I'm more aware, alert, like I'm being purposeful with what I'm doing instead of just doing it just because. So it's a big difference.
And I think so many men are just sleepwalking through their life. You know, you talked a lot about checking boxes.
Glad you said that.
You know, and man, I that just resonates, you know, and I think that's how so many men are viewing their life. It's very much like, I've got to do this and do this and do this, like as if there's like a formula, right? And if you can check all these boxes and go through all the right motions, that stuff will work out for you. Like you'll reach success.
What were your boxes that you were that's what I was going to ask you. What were the boxes that you were trying to check? Like just for your example. I'm sure we all have our own, but
To be a good provider would be one. To be rock solid, dependable, you know, at work and at home, taking care of everything at the house, keeping everything in order, you know, just being the guy that everybody could look to, you know, not having any tarnish on my persona, right? You know, and on the faith side, I didn't mention this, but, you know, that was always on my heart, you know, and I came up Catholic. We actually ended up, my second wife and I got married in the Catholic Church, you know, about 7 or 8 years after the legal marriage. You know, trying to do the right things. Girls got baptized in the Catholic Church at that time. But you know, that was one of the boxes too I really wanted to check. And I was making some efforts to do that, but wasn't quite there.
Yeah, and I mean, probably the biggest box was you trying to do it all by yourself. You know?
Right.
Yeah, like you said. Because those are good boxes. Those aren't
that's what I was
necessarily
just saying.
bad
They're all
boxes.
good things.
They're all good things, but they're hard to do by yourself.
Yeah, it was
know?
kind of like load me up, put more on my shoulders. I
Yeah.
can handle it. I wore that as a big badge of honor.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
I can
You
handle
know,
it.
In a way, I mean, it was destroying me in a way,
Yeah.
but it was also something that I thrived on it as well. It kept me going.
Yeah.
You know, I never wanted anybody to think anything like that guy doesn't pull his weight. He's not doing what he's supposed to.
You felt like you
That was
constantly
the
were having to
worst
prove
thing.
yourself.
Yeah, that was the worst thing somebody could have ever told me.
Yeah.
And this morning at our devotion, we talked about saying yes to things, right? And so Foundation Tribe meets Friday mornings, Midlothian, Virginia,
Nice plug.
6 a.m. Anyway, but yeah, we talked about how we get ourselves into saying yes a lot of stuff because we're trying to prove ourselves, right? And so all of a sudden we're overloaded. So,
And I think those are the things, you know, we want to check the boxes that we're good at checking. Those are the ones that we want to check. And you talked about, you know, your wife's love language was quality time, right? And the more stuff we're doing, the more boxes we're checking as men. Usually, a lot of those have to do with our jobs, careers, our providing. Every box that we're trying to check is a box that we're not trying to check too, right? Like when we say yes to, you know, taking on like a new project or assignment at work to try to, you know, climb that ladder, we're taken away from more dinners or weekends or whatever at home too. So that's the part that I think a lot of men are missing, right? It doesn't matter if you check all the boxes that you've got, you're checking the wrong boxes. You know, you're going after the wrong thing. And, you know, I look back on, you know, my 20s and 30s, and I was totally doing that as well. I would like volunteer to take on every extra thing in the Air Force, in the squadron I would be in, and really saw that as like a badge of honor that I can do more and I don't need help and all that. And it isolates you. It makes you less real, more fake, and it damages your relationships, you know?
Yeah, because I think it's easy to start saying yes to everybody else, and then when your wife says, "Hey, you want to do this with us?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to do that. I just this is my time to relax because I was just helping everybody else."
I was going to say, I've been on the go for over 40 hours this week.
It's so much easier, it seems, to say no to the people closest to you than people that you want to think you're not, you know, oh, he's a good guy. He's always there for me. You know,
I'm thinking now about the movie Click.
Yeah.
You guys seen that?
Ah, man.
Yes.
Movie.
Oh my gosh. Of course, box office.
Yeah.
I've seen everything. But man, I watched that movie,
scary movie.
in the worst possible place. I watched that movie on a deployment.
Yeah, gosh.
There's like a whole room full of us guys all away from our families for months. And we didn't know what we were getting into. We just thought, oh, it's a new Adam Sandler movie.
Right. This is going to be hilarious.
Let's watch the new Adam Sandler movie. And like everybody's trying to hide that they're crying. Gonna go home, gonna go try to call home.
Right.
You know, but that's, you know, to me, that's the guy who's just minimizing. It's not a big deal,
right,
to say no, they're fine, you know, but then like day after day after day. Yeah.
Dude, I chime in here for a second. There's actually, I feel like more power in saying no than when you say yes, because exercising your boundaries provides and shows what your value is and what you're prioritizing. So it's always like a balance of opportunity cost, right? Everything
100%.
everything you say yes to, you're going to cheat somebody else that you're going to have to say no to.
Yeah.
So it's always a prioritization. Like, what are you going to say yes to, and what means the most? What's going to keep your life in order, and prioritizing those people.
Wow. So how do you prioritize?
I'll let you know when I figure it out.
Well, I mean, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out, right? So how do we prioritize? Do we have a list of things of, like what we want to do or be, or like what our goals are? Like obviously our goal should be to live for Christ, right?
Yeah.
But like, what's our filter? I think that's the first step, right? What is our filter?
I'll tell you what I do. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I actually got this idea from Tort, our tribe leader. Hammer Tribe meets at Mondays 7 p.m. But no, he actually said to like put your prospects of life or your aspects of life, put it in different buckets, so categories. So I have it in like a spiritual, a career, a mental, and so each month I just kind of do a self visit with myself and just look at where I've gained, where I've lost. So it's almost like a I don't know what the right word would be.
A check-in.
It's like a bank account for your life.
Yeah.
And you're just balancing the ledger. So
love it.
That's what I have started doing this year, and it's worked well just to keep me on track. So.
By the way, I do need your goal updates by the end of the month. We are accountability with all that.
I'll put that on the list.
Yeah, that's a great question you asked, Box Office. And, so I've shared my story on one of the War Stories podcasts about how I came very close to divorce. And we were about to throw in the towel on marriage. And God brought a fantastic Christian counselor into my life and changed everything, turned everything around. So to answer your question about how do you prioritize now, I would say for me, I think, well, let me caveat this. I think the correct answer that we're supposed to say is God.
Yeah.
And I think I try to do that. I'm working on that. But I think probably the real honest answer about how I prioritize is probably my wife. But I used to, think that if I was doing everything right and checking every box and, having that exterior that looks good, like you were saying, that was good, that's what success looks like. And I think that's just the difference between how men think and women think. And most women are more concerned with how they feel. And we don't even think about that. We're like, what? Look at all this stuff I'm doing. There's a Men's Alliance guy who I won't name, who and he has said this before, joking about himself in a devotion, talking about, he said his wife once told him, you don't ever say I love you. And he goes, I can't even say this with a straight face, man. He goes, what are you talking about? I tell you I love you every day. And she was like, and he goes, every day when I go to work. That's how I tell you that I love you. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, how did you not get hit with a frying pan, man? And he was saying that like in shame, like, I can't believe I said that. That's how I used to think. But that's how so many men are thinking. They're like, if I'm doing this, if I'm providing this, it's all action verb oriented. Because like, I think, men, we want to climb mountains and slay dragons. Like when we say we'll do anything for a woman, that's what we mean. Yeah. We mean we'll fight a dragon. We don't mean we will sit and listen. That's the thing that they need. Yeah. That's the thing that I've learned. Like, okay, my priority is how my wife feels. And that was never true during my 20s or 30s. Yeah. And now I've learned, like, that's the barometer. That's how you know how your relationship is doing, is you ask your wife, how do you feel we're doing? Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of guys are terrified to ask that because they don't want to hear that answer. Yeah. And when you ask that, you have to not argue with whatever the answer is, because you can't argue with a person's feelings, right? Like if they feel blank, you can't argue them into believing that they're not, like, oh, I feel like we're not doing well. Well, let me convince you that we are. Like, that's not going to work. So
you're crazy.
This is my,
filter now. This is my checklist is, and sometimes when we're not doing great, like I know I don't want to ask her.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Right.
you know,
The first week.
and sometimes, right. Sometimes if you as a guy know you're not doing well and don't want to ask her, then you're doing really bad.
Yeah.
Because usually we think we're doing okay.
Yeah.
We think we're doing pretty good. That's why we ask.
Yeah.
We wouldn't ask if we didn't think we were doing all right. And we're hoping to get that. Yeah, we're doing pretty good. And we ask and they're like,
That's why you just start doing everything that you know she wants you to do. And then for about 2 weeks, and then ask her, how am I doing?
that works if you're right
Like-
about what she wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How am I doing? You're doing great.
If you guess
That was
correctly.
easy. All right. Then
Well, then just do that all the time.
yeah. Well, you had yourself like a month off.
Why 2 weeks? Yeah. So to me, that's the big thing is I ask Carrie, how do you think we're doing? How do you feel we're doing right now?
So how long have you and Carrie been married?
24 years.
So obviously, y'all have been married, seen a lot. And
Yeah.
So just for me, selfishly, I'm asking,
Yeah.
out of advice, how
Yeah.
often do you do that check-in and reflect and ask how?
We probably have a good sit down relationship check in twice a week.
Okay.
It should be more often than that,
Hmm.
but I know my wife's going to listen to this podcast, so I better tell the truth. It should be like every day, every other day. You don't have to ask that question every day, but
Yeah.
if you're sitting down talking,
Yeah.
you know you're doing well. And so what we do, the routine we've established, and so I'd say we've been doing great for the past 9. We were terrible for the first 14, and we had that transition year,
Yeah.
the year of
Yeah.
crisis, right, where everything pivots. But we've been doing great for 9, and so the thing we have established in our relationship is we just call it happy hour. Even if we're not drinking alcohol, we still call it happy hour. And it's that time period every day when I've come home but it's before dinner. That period right there, we usually go sit on the porch. We sit and talk with some sort of beverage, and that's our connection. And you can try to connect on that emotional level. I think that's the most important thing that we can try to do for our wives is connect with them emotionally. So don't talk about the car needs an oil change and we need more milk, right? Talk about like, here's my feelings, my hopes, my dreams, my fears, my concerns, all that stuff. And if I would say to a guy listening, if your wife is sharing with you a hope, fear, dream, concern, you're winning. Right there. Shut your mouth and keep listening. And keep, like if she's sharing that kind of good, intimate, close, emotional stuff with you, like that should be like you should have like a red flag going in your mind right now. Like, this is valuable. This is golden.
And
Pay attention, put your phone down.
Yeah.
Listen to everything she's saying.
Attentive,
this is it. This is how you win, and if she's either not sharing that stuff, you got to figure out why she's not and draw it out of her. Figure out if she's not because of something you've done.
Because it's going to be weird for a lot of people if they've never done that before. Like, all right, let's sit and talk face to face. It's like, dude, what do you want to talk about? Like, I'm not comfortable with this.
You think about it. That's like the most fundamental thing, right? Like if you're not sitting and talking with your wife, how on earth do you expect to have a good relationship?
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Men, are you looking to buy a new home? Maybe it's a vacation home, maybe a rental property, or maybe it's building your dream home, and you need a mortgage. Well, I want to tell you about a tribesman who can help you with just that. Chris Norwood, call sign Coop from Hammer Tribe. He works at Towne Bank Mortgage. He has been doing this for over 21 years. He's qualified to lend in 16 states. He can definitely help you out. Let me give you his contact info. You can go to townbankmortgage.com/Chris Norwood, or you can call him directly at 804-439-3206. Again, this is Chris Norwood, call sign Coop. He's a Men's Alliance guy from Towne Bank Mortgage who can help get you a loan for your dream home. He even helped Iron buy his new house. Check him out.
You made me think of something that I totally forgot of, which was about, when my ex and I first got married, we had a great Christian counselor through our church back in Lynchburg, told us all the right things to do. And that was one of them. And that's what we actually started doing the first couple of years of our marriage is we would spend our anniversary when we would go away, even before kids, even after kids, when we would go away, we would talk about what are our goals this year together? How are we doing? What could we be working on? Then we would try to do check-ins every 3 months to 6 months or something like that. Now, granted, some of that turned into some robotic things because it's just like, okay, well, this is just an interchange at some point. It's got to be genuine. But man, you made me think back. I'm like, dang, we did that for the first couple years. And I want to say that maybe after kid number 2 or just before kid number 2, we stopped.
Yeah.
And I mean, wow. They're just made me think in my head. I'm like, yeah, there was a big difference after that. I mean, like, it's all about what you put into it, right? You've already said you got to be listening. You got to be attentive. Here, a lot of people, as I was trying to say, are robotic with that. Like, okay, family meeting. This is a corporate meeting now. All right, what are we doing? Well, last night, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's more than that. Like you said, you sit, you just chill, you have a conversation.
Yeah, I think just hearing you say that makes me realize, like, you should not have this conversation with your wife at a table. It shouldn't be at a table, and there shouldn't be paper. Like, you've got to try to make this relaxed.
I know.
Like,
some type of people out there. I don't know.
You need to be like, having a drink on a swing set or something. Like, it's got to be.
I like that.
Yeah, you got to be not robotic or rigid about this, and especially with the family meeting. If you're having a meeting with kids, man, there needs to be like ice cream involved. They need to not know it's a meeting. If you call a family meeting, you just ruined the family meeting.
No one.
Instead, it's like, hey, let's go get
Family
cookies
meeting,
and ice cream.
6 a.m. tomorrow.
I'll send you the Google link.
Dude, that's what my dad was like. All right, we're starting to do devotions at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Uh-oh.
Forget that. Like,
did we get in trouble?
It would last for like 3 days, and it's like, this ain't working. Maybe because it's 6 a.m.
Yeah, I can relate, man. That's typical dad effort right there, man. He's trying.
It's a good effort.
Yeah.
Goose, what you were just saying about the time that you and Carrie spend together, Stephanie and I do the exact same thing. We go out on the patio and just spend some time talking. And we do this a lot, like probably 5 nights out of the week. But that's our connectivity time.
Yep.
Now, a lot of she's doing more talking and I'm doing more listening most of the time.
That's how it should be.
And seems to be working. But, sometimes she just needs to download stuff.
Yeah.
So whatever it may be, right? And it could just be what's going on in life right then. But it's one of my I really love that time with her. Like, it really is a highlight of our marriage. And, a couple other things that just struck me is, doing the right thing as a husband, being a provider and a protector and to pastor the family. All of those are great, and they're part of the recipe. Like, I'm very confident most women want a man who is a good provider and protector and will lead his family in faith too, right? If you're missing one of those pieces, you're probably not going to have very good sessions of communication on the patio. So make no mistake, most women are not looking for their man to just chill and play, Xbox all day. Even though they might have great conversations.
No, that's a great point. Yeah. This is like in addition to all that good stuff that we're doing. This is an add to it. Don't replace it.
Yeah. So, it's a recipe.
Yeah.
So do you think sex is like a secondary or thirdary thing when it comes, or should that, like, how prioritized should that be?
Sex is your that's your barometer.
Yeah.
that tells you how well you're connecting with her emotionally.
Right.
Mm.
If you're having a lot of great sex, then you're doing really well
within
She's
marriage.
connecting. Yeah, she's connecting with your wife. She's connecting, or she feels connected to you emotionally.
So
Yeah.
your question, how am I doing, shouldn't be during sex.
How are we doing?
That'd be a
Want to make
good
sure she's
concept.
Thanks, Shadow.
Just be ready for the
Thanks,
answer.
Shadow.
Just be ready for the answer.
You know, you probably shouldn't lead with sex unless you're Shadow.
You know, I think since you brought this up,
Yeah.
you know, I think most of us know this, but it's good to be reminded is, you know, men want sex and then we feel like connecting emotionally.
Right.
Yeah.
And women want to connect emotionally and then they feel like having sex. So somebody has to go first to meet the other person's need.
Mm.
And that's where being the leader as the man comes in. So we should be meeting her need first. So if a guy makes it his goal to get more sex, he will almost always miss that target and be frustrated and disappointed. But if a guy makes it his goal to fill his wife's emotional tank, to meet her emotional needs, if that becomes your goal, then you're going to get more sex. But you can't do it disingenuously, like you were saying. It's got to be genuine, because if you're doing it for sex, they'll know, because they have a sixth sense.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're genuinely just like, you know what, I want to connect with her emotionally and I'm going to make that my goal, I think that's going to overflow into your sex life. Then you're just going to be having better sex.
Yeah, for sure.
As
and
a result.
It's not transactional. You know,
Right.
It's not, well, I'm connecting emotionally today and we just had a great conversation. Therefore, you know, sex is coming.
Yeah.
No, that's not how that works. It's a much longer term.
Yeah. So
thing.
that's right. That's a good point. Like we think of things like in a day, you know, guys are like, we did this today, you know,
Filled your coffee cup.
I'll meet you. I'll meet you upstairs.
yeah. Their timeline's a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So to add to this a little bit, one thing you said, Goose, earlier was that how often do you have to communicate? And you were saying once a day would be healthy. You think about that. That's 365 days a year.
Yeah.
That's putting a number on how often and how frequently you have to communicate to have a healthy marriage. And so my perspective is from more of a very fresh marriage, because it was only 2.5 years. But to be open and honest to what the topic is right now, it got to a point where we weren't having sex. I think it was at least like 2 or 3 months once in that span. And I don't have enough experience to know what's right, what's wrong, but it doesn't seem right in marriage. And also we weren't even sleeping together near the tail end of it. So if I can give some advice to people that are newlyweds, don't let it get to that point. Because at that point I was too scared I could sense that there was issues. I was just too scared to step up and address it. So
yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. I'm glad you said step up, because I was going to interject and say something at some point too, which was I've had a lot of married friends and the spouses. You know, there's a lot of good-looking single guys. You're one of them, right? And you're not the example that I'm about to say right now, but this is outside of MA. So anybody listening to this, you can say it's not about you, so calm down. But I will say, man, why is that guy single? And all the wives of the spouse, you know, the spouses I know of, will say he's not confident. I can tell that he's just not a confident guy. He doesn't really lead.
Yeah.
Like they see that.
They sense
and
it.
I'm like, how do you sense that? Like women know. They see a leader. They see someone who steps up.
Yeah.
And so I'm the same way. I was the same way.
Yeah.
Like we didn't our last couple years of marriage were awful in that regard in the marriage bed too, because I just was indecisive about everything.
Yeah.
So I didn't have my confidence. I didn't lead. So, but women can sense that.
Yeah. Man, I'm just like, okay, we got a whole podcast we can do on sex. Now. Let's just schedule that.
Can
shadows lead you?
I am not the expert.
No, that's definitely we definitely need to do that. That's a great topic because it does show us usually how we're doing, the health of the marriage. And when you asked me how often do I do this, and I was like thinking about our happy hours after that, and then you were talking, I realized like we sat on the back porch this morning and had coffee.
Nice.
And I'm like, you know what? We had a really great connection this morning.
Yeah.
We just sat out there over a cup of coffee, and like I didn't even realize that was that.
Yeah.
Like that was it. Like that was an emotional connection with no intentionality behind it. It was just like our routine. As many mornings as we don't have something, urgent, is let's try to just sit and have our coffee together.
Yeah.
So I think like there's a lot of ways you can weave it in. I think a lot of couples like coffee or like wine or like walking, going for a walk is probably a great way to connect.
Yeah. It's just about prioritizing and sitting down and staying focused and listening, like you said. Spuds.
Yeah. I think to your point, Spuds, like one of the hardest things for guys to do when their wife starts talking is to not try to solve the problem, to not try to fix it. Yeah.
What if your wife, I'm not talking about mine, but what if you have a wife that like your time together, all she's doing is gossiping about other people? Like, cause I know that's a big thing for like, I don't know. I want to say it's a big thing for women. I mean, we probably all gossip, but if she's talking about something that is at the time to be like, you really shouldn't be gossiping. God doesn't want you to do, it doesn't seem like that would be the right time to do that. It's like,
what do you think? What would you do?
I'd probably just let her talk and then maybe bring it up later.
Sounds good.
Because it's like, like you said, we're always trying to fix. It's probably not the right time to correct her on anything.
You should say, well, what are you going to do about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I agree. I would say like with kind of anything, like I probably wouldn't bring it up right then.
Yeah.
And then, so I'd let her say everything she's got to say, but then at a later day, a later time, and then I would go another step and I would add in a heads up.
Yeah.
So me and my wife, we do this a lot. We found it to be helpful. Like, let's say you do want to have a conversation with her about her gossiping.
Yeah.
I would, if this were me, I would tell her, I would say, hey, listen, I need to have a pretty important conversation with you later about something serious. Let me know when would be a good time for us to have that conversation. Yeah. So now she kind of gets mentally prepared and there's a heads up, and then she picks the place and time.
Yeah.
She can look at her calendar. She could be like, okay, tonight after the kids go to bed, or why don't we do that? Why don't we go get lunch tomorrow and you can talk about it?
Yeah.
So that you're not ambushing her, and this is, I see women do this a lot. Like they ambush the guy when he's watching football.
Yeah.
If you walk in the room and a guy's watching football and you say, hey, I need you to clean out the guttering.
Yeah.
That is not going to go well.
Right.
Because of when and where you chose to do it. Yeah. But if you go in at a commercial and you say, hey, I've got something important that I would like for you to do, that I would like to talk to you about at halftime, would that be okay?
Yeah.
Now he's like, okay, yep, I'll get prepared. Okay, what is it?
Yeah. And it's even like you said in the past, and it's probably true for all of us, like when you're telling your kid something, and then they hear it from somebody else, and they're like, Dad, so-and-so just told me, like, it was great. He said I should do this. Like, I've been telling you that, forever. Seems like that can be the same thing for our spouses a lot of the time, where we'll tell them things and they'll hear it from somebody else or the pastor. And they're like, he said I should do this. It's like, oh, I've been telling you that, like some things it just seems like they can't hear from us. They need to hear it from other people.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
That's probably true. So, I think we asked this question in the first podcast. So I want to ask you guys, if you could give 20-year-old you one piece of advice, what would you tell to your younger self, knowing what you know now?
I think I would go back to the communication topic and listening, because I just, in terms of marriage, because it's what we're talking about, that just never prioritized that, never did it frequently enough. And of course, now I would go back and to give the right answer, I would 100% put God at the center, but that just never happened. So I would absolutely prioritize communication, because one thing you just said earlier was how you include your wife in the decision making process of addressing something, whether it's a decision or some broader topic that has a higher importance, in just including and being one unit. And I never did that. So I would absolutely, if I could go back and tell my younger self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And when you say putting God center, what does that look like?
So for me, it's no matter what decision I'm going to make, taking it to God first. So I never did that, because I can tell you and this is probably a typical answer, right? But it's true. My discernment fails every time, but his is always the best. And so I always tried to do everything like similar to Spud's story, tried to do it all myself, tried to put the world on my shoulders. And you try to do that, and the more you pile on, the easier it is to fall. You're just adding more weight.
Yeah.
It's like treading water, and then you're throwing cinder blocks to yourself. It's like, all right, now you got to keep treading with 50 extra pounds.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by that.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. What about you, Spuds?
I would have told my younger self to not thrive on my own isolation, and take so much pride in doing it all on my own. I mean, I'm not sure my 20-year-old self would have listened to me, but in hindsight, that would have been a really important thing. And to have more guys around me that had faith as a big part of their life, right, would have helped me immensely. The other thing too is that just relationships, I had a tendency to, go all in very quickly. Had very, a heart for that, I guess. And, I would rush into things, right? And I would say, take your time, take time to get to know that person, really get to know them, right? And make sure that you've got alignment on, especially matters of faith, and make sure foundational things are set. And I tell the guys around the fire a lot, when I have the opportunity, there's some younger guys to, just that, that's one of my big pieces of advice is, things can escalate very quickly in relationships. Just take your time and make sure that, the foundation is set right, and,
that's good.
I take a lot of responsibility for that. And my foundation wasn't really set right either. So I'm telling this to myself as well, but it's really important. Because when those cracks are there, they're going to manifest themselves sooner or later.
It's almost equally important to set your foundation before you even enter into a relationship or into a marriage.
100%.
You have to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's what you were doing during those single years. You were getting your own foundation together, getting
That's
it
right.
in order.
That's right.
Were any of you guys in your previous marriages, did you ever lead in prayer? Did you ever lead her in prayer? Just curious.
I did a few times. I remember, I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. I mean, yeah, quite a bit. I mean, outside of a meal, we tried
not
to do,
during a meal.
Yeah, as I would say, outside of that, there was a few times I think, but not a lot. If I'm really having to try to think about it, then probably not as much as I needed to.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Never did. I mean, I don't even think I did at meals, but no, I never led in prayer, and I isolated and just never stepped up. And so that's a huge, huge aspect, is not just the prayer, but just stepping up.
Yeah, same thing for me. A handful of times outside of meals, and even at meals, it was more so big family events. I would typically lead a blessing, but
Yeah.
I think I was of the mindset that's for church time more so, and I wanted to be at church, but definitely didn't lead as well as I should have in making that happen either. But yeah, so
I feel like leading in prayer is like one of the hardest things to do. It's like this, it's still scary.
Yeah.
It's still hard because it's like so personal and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. And this is one of those things that I feel is like the most important thing we can do. And it's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
Because it's like, as soon as we open our mouth to pray, we start thinking of all of our own failures
Yeah.
and shortcomings. And like, I was just yelling at my son.
Right.
And now I can't pray.
And that's when you should be asking for forgiveness for that
Yeah.
before you go. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it sounds like something that should be so easy. It's like, just pray, like it doesn't really require anything physically, or we're both here, let's just pray like we did at the beginning of the podcast. But it seems like you said, there's so much of a barrier. Like, I don't know why. Maybe it's just because you don't feel like you said, up to it, or they're going to be like, why are you leading prayer? Like, you got your own problems.
I think the most important things are the simplest.
Right.
Like sitting and talking.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
Like
on paper.
that seems pretty obvious,
simple,
right?
Yeah.
But we all overlook it.
So much. Leading in prayer. Okay, that sounds pretty. It's so simple that it's easy to dismiss.
Right.
And like, it's like, no, that's the key.
Yeah.
That's the foundation.
Yeah. That's the meat.
Talk with them every day. Lead in prayer.
It's odd that something so simple requires so much courage, right?
Yeah.
It does.
It requires a strong heart to do that.
It really does. Closing thoughts, guys. What's something that's on your heart to share that maybe we didn't ask about?
Well, I've got one. And this is really important. It's, I talked about the forgiveness piece, with your exes. It's very important. You got to forgive yourself too. And you got to do that because it's very easy to fall into the trap if you've been divorced to say, well, now I'm not worthy to lead, right? Not worthy to be a tribe leader. Or I'm not worthy to lead at church or in my own family. And that's one of the biggest lies that is out there. None of us are worthy to do any of that. We are through Christ. He makes us worthy. But guys, don't fall into that trap, because you are worthy. You got a lot to bring to the table. Now you got to do some work on yourselves to get yourself right again. But never sit on the sideline saying, because I had this failure that I can't lead anymore.
Yeah.
Because you're robbing yourself. You're robbing from your family and your tribesmen and your church and from Jesus. You're created to be a leader, and your past failures are not going to define you. So
yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest things, because there's so much still to do, and you can't let that anchor just hold you down.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So much good stuff there.
Nobody wants to follow that.
Yeah.
We can just close it.
Just stop it now. So the one thing that Spuds didn't touch on that I'm going through right now in my life, you covered so much, Spud. It's okay to be single. You're okay to go through a period of singleness. I struggled with that on and off so much, trying to jump back in too quick, and a lot of dates did not go well. And now I'm finally at a place where I'm like, hey, if it's just me and God, we'll be all right. We're going to be perfectly fine. So that's what I would speak to, is if you're going through this and you just exited a marriage, your life's not over. Just take a breath, pray to God, trust God, and you'll be fine.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of single men in the Bible did amazing things. It's true.
Feel like too, if when people just jump right back in, they make the same mistakes again.
Yep.
It's like they're not growing, they're not changing, they're just boom, keep on that same roller coaster.
You don't have the awareness to think of and reflect on the things that happen. So.
Yeah. And, Goose, you said it's the number 2 most traumatic thing that might happen to someone. You've got to give yourself time to heal.
Yeah.
I mean, you just do. And you're not going to be the person that can be that good husband or that good leader unless you let the healing happen.
So true.
Let God come into that. Get counseling if you need it. All of that.
That's good.
All right. Well, good.
Say something.
Yeah. It's all on you.
So I have a list of things I was going to make sure that we touched on, and you guys pretty much took care of it on your own, and I love it. The only other thing I can think of off the top of my head is, when you go through this is such an emotional time. And immediately when something happens, you have a lot of negative self-talk, negative thoughts of, I'm going to be alone. I'm not worthy. This is all my fault. Like, you're going to start going on a dark path, thinking negativity about yourself. Stop it. Don't do that. Like, know that this is only one part of your story, and it's not the end of it. There's a phrase that I don't even remember where I saw it. Could have been on an Instagram reel for all I know. But about 6 months, halfway through the separation, it changed my way of thinking. And it's so simple. It's to get through it, you have to go through it.
Yep.
I was like,
so true.
All right. Like, to get through it, you got to go through it. And how you're going to go through it is your decision. And so it's surrounding yourself by the right people, right men, surrounding yourself with the right influences, and how you live out your daily life. So
that's
all I
good,
got.
man.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Shadow.
Well, just talking about worthy. I mean, we
wisdom.
always tell people, at least I do. It's like when they get worried about, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel worthy. It's like, who cares?
You're not.
Don't worry about feeling worthy.
Yeah.
It's like God doesn't care. He doesn't care about our worthiness. He just wants our willingness.
Yeah, man.
It's like, you're worthy enough to be loved by God. We're all wretched sinners. So get over the feeling if you're worthy or not. It's like, just do what God says. He just says, follow me. So you don't have to be worthy of anything to follow God, So
It's good.
That's good.
yeah.
It's really good.
I think what you said, Spuds, about forgiveness is so important. There's another tribesman that I wanted to come on this episode, but he didn't want to share it. But he said, I just don't want to be on there, but you can share my story. And the termination of his marriage was his fault. And he takes full responsibility for that. And he was having an affair. And I know there's a lot of guys listening to this who are in that situation. And so I just wanted to speak to that. Like, this is where you have to forgive yourself and not allow that past failure to define you. So you can be 100% honest with yourself, and you can be like, I messed up and I've asked for forgiveness. God has forgiven me. Now I've got to forgive myself, and I've got to move on. And no amount of wallowing in shame is going to fix anything from any of our past. So I just want to say, guys, like, no matter what you've done, God forgives you.
Yep.
And you can't fix the past by staying down.
Yep.
Right. That's why we got to get back up, dust off. And if God has singleness for you, if God has marriage for you, go after that new thing, brand new and in Christ, and go after it with your whole heart. So thank you guys so much, man.
Yeah. I wish we could talk about this stuff every day.
Sharing your stories is very powerful. There's so much power when a person shares their story. There's power in sharing our story, and there's so much power in honesty and truth. Right. So what you guys have done is awesome. So thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And next up, we'll do podcast on sex.
Nice.
Yeah, all right.
Thanks, Goose.
To find out more about what we're doing and to join us on our mission, go to men'salliancetribe.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a 5-star review.